I bet you guys can't. Just kidding. Today is that day. New look. I got married, and for some reason I decided I was just gonna like change everything about me. Me and the wife just flipped everything. I got rid of the beard, mostly because of health issues. What I do with my job, I have to have a full seal, and the beard just wasn't doing it. So this is the new me. I don't know what, this is it. You guys are just gonna have to deal with it. I'm just gonna let you guys know right meow that I will not ask you for your license and registration. So today is the day we finally get around to installing Trackdog Racing Rotrex centrifugal supercharger on the Miata. I know it's been a long time coming. It's been a while, but I was trying to figure out how to do it. So I decided I'm going to do a full-on breakdown, one long video, and down below I'll leave sections about the install. Basically from, you know, click here for this part, click here for this part, click here that part. That way it's interactive and you guys can go through and pick whatever part that you guys are struggling on. You can click on it and it'll be broken down. It'll be a little different on my car because my car is pretty much gutted, but there's gonna be some other stuff that I have to work around that you guys might not have to, or you might have to. So with that being said, let's get started into this. And let me tell you my reason for going centrifugal supercharger. There's a couple reasons why I decided to go centrifugal supercharger versus turbo. Some pros and cons for both of them. The one thing about the Trackdog Racing kit is you get instant power. With most centrifugal superchargers, you're gonna have the power right there and then. There's no lag behind it. It's right there when you want it, and it seemed for me to be a better fit. Not only that, these Trackdog Racing developed this kit for track purposes. You can 100% use it on your street car, but the nice thing about it is this particular kit is meant for track use. It has been tested, it's used over and over again, and it works flawlessly. And I kind of enjoyed that fact because I'm also trying to make a reliable car, because no one wants to sit there and work on the car at the track like I did pretty much all like my last season I raced was just working on this car, and honestly it sucked. Minor things will happen, that's cool, but I don't want to be sitting there constantly working on this car. Another thing you get with centrifugal superchargers is power on the low RPM. You get a very linear power band through and through the RPM range, so you'll have power out of the hole, and you'll also have power all the way up to red line, and it almost maintains an NA stock feel to it. You're just gonna have more power all the way through the power band. Another wonderful thing about centrifugal superchargers is this system is not mounted to the top or on the block, or unlike root style, it's not mounted and you're not getting heat soaked. It is off to the side. Therefore, you're not going to build up as much heat as you would a turbocharged system that's using the exhaust to just pump that turbo and spin it up, which is super, super hot. And it's not necessarily bad. This just has less heat than a turbocharged setup would. And with that, another nice thing about this is an isolated system. The oil is completely isolated from the rest of the block. It's got its own cooling. It's got its own radiator. So it doesn't have to have the same temperature as the block itself. So that's also another nice feature about that. Now, with a centrifugal supercharger, there are also some few cons, but not as much as you think. With it being a centrifugal supercharger, you have to use belts to power this. That being said, you're technically taking power from the motor to power the supercharger, and with that, you kind of technically lose power in general. Is it enough to make a big difference? No, but you do got to keep that in mind, that you are using the motor to spin the supercharger to make your power. That also comes kind of, I want to say, limited tuning ability. I don't want to say it's like 100% off, like you can't tune this, but you're pretty much kind of stuck with your linear power band. Are there ways to get around it? Most likely, but it's not going to be easy. You're pretty much just kind of stuck with a linear power band through and through, which can be beneficial, but it can also hurt you depending on what you are trying to achieve with your car. Now with that power band, and I know I said before, the con is low RPM boost. That's also a side effect because sometimes pumping large amounts of air at low RPM is not good for your motor. So that can also be a negative side effect. And with it being a belt-driven system, you're also looking at limited mounting locations. You have to be parallel with your crank system or have some type of crank drive. It's just, you don't have very many options where you can put a centrifugal supercharger as you can a turbocharger. But going Trackdog racing, supercharger was probably a better setup than most turbocharged systems. Just in my opinion, for heat reduction, simplicity, and reliability. And that's pretty much what you want in a race car. With that being said, let's start this install process right now. The nice thing about them is they provide you a very detailed instruction list on how to get this supercharger installed step by step by step. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to do a video version of this booklet because some people are visual. I mean, there are great pictures in here, but some people are visual. Sometimes it's just nice to have a video of how to install this. So we will start with hood strut installation. Let's go. You will find the hood struts located in the hardware and accessory box. Right here. Look at that. The benefit of these is you finally get to get rid of this sloppy hood stand that if you've been at the track or you've been at a track day or even a car show and you have this up with these light hoods, all of a sudden you get a nice big old breeze and next thing you know this thing slams forward. You got this rod hanging off the side and you got damage, and that eliminates that problem with this. And finally it'll just be nice not to have to worry about that. Just open the hood and up they go. So these are pretty simple to install. You don't need that much tools. They provide 2 of them for you. So all you need is a drill, a scale or a ruler, marker to mark some stuff. There's the 2 pieces they provide with you. The kit comes with this, all this, and your little sockets here. You need a 10mm and 12mm socket or a 10mm wrench. Those two, the 10mm wrench and socket, are interchangeable, and a punch. That's it. Pretty simple. First thing we're going to do is measure out 33mm on your scale. We're gonna go from the corner of this to right there, and at the end of this we're gonna mark. As you can see right there, we have our mark. Now from the top side here inward, we're gonna measure 8mm to where this part right here meets. So it'll look something like this right here. What I wanted up doing is, since these are very sharp, I kind of made a center mark right about there. You can kind of see it to give me a lineup for my punch. So after this, you're going to take the 5mm drill bit that they provide with you, and you're going to drill through the hinge and the hood, because the tap is going to need room to go all the way through. So you're going to need to drill a hole in the hood. That way the tap has enough space to do its job. Also, I recommend laying something down over your fender. If you have a nicer car, like I said, this is a race car, so I'm not 100% worried about it. It's also going to get some work done to it, so I would do that before you start drilling. Now you're going to take the self-tapper and you're going to very carefully tap this hole out. Doesn't take much, so here we go. Let the drill do its work so you start feeling resistance like that, and then back it out. Careful not to angle the bit in any direction, and there you go. Should have a tapped hole. Now, I don't know if you can see this. You have 2 different size ball joints that come inside the hood strut or the shock struts. The smaller one, which is right here, is the one that's going to go into the hood, and the bigger one right here is the one that's going to go into the fender. So now we'll install this one, which is the smaller one. Now you should have no resistance putting this in, and if you do, you probably got to re-tap, but it should go in relatively easy. Like so. And after you got it snug, you'll take your 10mm wrench or socket here, and you'll just tighten it up until it's snug. No need to over tighten it. Now, using a 10mm socket, you're going to remove this bolt here, and as you can see, there's a little alignment pin on the factory fender, so use that and remove this bolt. Now, using the supplied washer, you set that here, take the taller of the joints, and you will screw that in right here. Take your 10mm socket again and tighten that down. Like I said, snug, but not over tight. Don't want to strip anything out. Now comes the entertaining part. You'll take your Trackdog Racing, right? And you will put it piston side up. So you'll clip it on here like this, and then you'll clip this side to this. Using my shoulder here, put this down here, all the way up. And there you go. After that's kind of installed, you'll install the pins. So, you can see the pin, there's a little hole right here. Kind of a pain, but get that in there like so. Might have to do some work here. You can kind of see the pin needs to go through the tiny hole here, and then there's a little tiny hole up top that basically locks that ball in place. So might have to do some finagling, especially with the stress on the hood. But once you get that in there, you push it in, lock it across, and that's locked. And you do the same thing for the bottom one. Just like so. This one I had to come in from this side, kind of see where the bottom of the pin goes right here. A lot easier access to kind of go from this angle. Slide it in there and lock it over. Once you get this side done, you just repeat the same steps on the other side. And now that is done, we're gonna do the next thing. As you can see, it was pretty easy. On to the fuel pump. All right, now here's the thing with that. Perfect instructions, everything you need to know to replace the fuel pump. But I already have a Dutchworks fuel pump installed in my car. So we're gonna skip that process. I'm sure there are plenty of great videos. I do not have one, but there are other great videos out there how to put a fuel pump in. Super simple, especially like this one when there's nothing back there. Now we're gonna go to fuel injector installation. Let's go. Hey Sabine, are you ready for noises? I'm kidding, this one doesn't do shut but it goes. She's like, God, you are a weirdo. So a long time ago, I mean, this was two years ago or so, I bought a set of Dutchworks 550 injectors because I planned on turbocharging the Miata. Never got around to it because just things. And so I've had these for a hot minute, and it's finally time to install them. So here's the kit that Dutchworks provides. Here's the flow rate sheet. Pretty nice. You're gonna need this for tuning purposes. So there's that, or at least inputs and parameters. There's a harness adapters, it looks like. And then there's the injectors. So let's get the old ones off. Cool, the first thing you wanna do before you start taking the fuel rail off is depressurize the system. Right here in this corner, I have like a adapter so I can do like fuel pressure testing on the track. This is how I would depressurize my system. If not, you'd have to like take the fuel pump relay out, then crank your car over for a few seconds, then repeat that like twice at least, you know, crank it over twice. That should evacuate all the fuel from the fuel lines. So let's get this removed. Let's start by getting this unplugged. Rotate these out of the way. Sorry. All right, this ground strap off, then get the fuel rail. All right, so you use a 10mm to take this off here, and then you're gonna use a 12 to get the 3, I don't know if you can see it, but there's one here, and one here. The 3 bolts that hold the fuel rail off. Don't be surprised when you pull these out if you get a little fuel. All right, so now once you get those 3 bolts off, you can kind of move this harness out of the way here. They're gonna stay kind of in shape. I don't know if you can see that. They're not gonna get out of order for you. They're kind of wired in a way where you can take them off for simplicity, unless you have an aftermarket harness. So move that out of the way here. Take this off here. Careful with these little caps here. They tend to fall off and go missing. So don't do that, because then your fuel injectors won't be sitting properly. All right, once you pull this back, the injector rail can only go so far back without taking the intake manifold off or some other things. So what you're gonna wind up doing is, you can kind of see where the injectors go into. You're gonna leave this back like so. Fuel will come out, so don't be startled. You're gonna push this forward like so. using the spot where the injector goes into as like an extra space. And then you'll be able to pull these back and out, and there you go. There's your injector, and there's the rubber seal that goes around it, so make sure you don't lose that. That goes right in there. Okay, so you can kind of see the difference between, not kind of, you definitely can see the difference between the OE fuel injector and the Dashworks fuel injector. This is a lot more compact of a design, and just because it's more compact does not mean it doesn't pack a punch. So as you can see, it also comes with new bushings. You can kind of see that that bushing there on the top is shot. We will put the new ones on. We will use the provided grease and grease up all the bushings here and here and all that stuff, and make sure that they stay lubed and they don't crack and all that stuff. So alrighty, so let's get these in here. So that. The injectors are kind of just chilling in there. And then once we do that, carefully negotiate the fuel rail, which is going to be kind of hard, so take your time, onto the injectors. So once that is on, we'll bolt started. Bolt started here. Kind of double check everything, make sure that they are secured and bolted down. Alrighty, make sure that's nice and snug. The injectors, somewhat, little bit of rotation, but not like anything crazy. You don't want the bushings to be blown out, so those are good right there. Now we're gonna take the harnesses that they provide you with. We're gonna get those plugged in. They'll actually be easier to plug in because the plugs are this way, not that way. Now that all these are connected, now we will plug in the harness. Always make sure you put your grounds back in, because that will mess with you later on down the road. Snug this down. All right, there it is. I will say I'm not really fond of this little adapter thing. It makes sense. I guess technically if I wanted to, I can replace the head on this with their connector, but for now, this is what we're gonna do. And then I'm gonna pressurize the system and see if we have any leaks. So now what you wanna go and do is start the car up and just double check everything. So I'm going to crack the garage door open just a little bit because it's freezing outside. Crack the garage door open a little bit and then start the car up. Nice thing about these injectors is you don't necessarily have to have a tune in for them. They're just gonna spray at the voltage that's factory level for them. Now what this piece of paper does here is when you go for tuning, you're gonna input the scale into the tuner, then your injectors will unlock its full potential. Right now it's just gonna fire the factory voltage and however the factory signal is given to them. So let's start this up or see if it even starts up and check for leaks. It's alive! Guys, I'm almost starting to think that I had a bad injector. Because it sounds perfectly fine. Also, I want you to know how awesome Haltech is because this is running without an intake, so Haltech rocks. Yeah, it sounds normal. Holy crap! There you have it, pretty simple. Not very hard to do injectors. Let's go on to the next step. So for the next step, after we install the hood struts, is gonna be heat shield. This beautiful thing here. This right here is gonna be installed on these headers, like so. Boom, we're done. It's gonna get installed over these headers, and it's actually really thick. It's gonna provide nice heat insulation in one direction away from the supercharger. So it's a pretty simple setup. You get provided like the way, so I gotta show you guys something. The way they do everything is sealed off in the packages you need. Like say A2's got all that stuff, R5's got its own stuff. So they provide you with referencing in the instructions to what bag you need. In this case, this one's R9. This is what you're gonna need to mount this heat blanket over the headers. Mine's gonna be a little different because I also have drop mounts. So this fit back here is a little bit tighter, but we're gonna get these brackets out here. Pretty simple. We'll take our 14. Take this 14 here, loosen this up. And we'll place it face up onto the stud like so. That, using this one up here. Like so. Same deal, repeat the process, but there's that. Once you get that installed, take your blanket. Those AWR drop mounts kind of make this a little bit tighter of a fit compared to normally, but I will try my best to get this to fit between every camera stopped recording for some reason, so that's cool. It's kind of a pain to get in, but I got this part here wrapped around the front half of the header and then kind of behind the coolant right here. And then the same way on this side, I got it wrapped behind the header so this coolant line is a little more protected. You can only do so much. I mean, this thing wraps here from the factory, so there's that. Blanket is installed. Nice. All right, there you have it. It's simple, but it's gonna take a little bit of time. You're gonna have to wind up kind of like getting the bolts started. Once you got it all squared away, tighten them down, and you're gonna have to work slowly getting things tucked in and kind of pushed away from anything that might move. As you can see here, it really doesn't hit the steering rack, so you don't gotta worry about that, but just take your time. You can see this here, how I have it wrapped up underneath this. Kind of have this folded over so you can get access to the bolt on both sides. This is kind of a pain too, but the same thing. I got this drop down and this tucked underneath the header, underneath this. So this has a layer of this in between. And then I got this stuff on Amazon, just wrapped this. This is your coolant hose that runs from here through and stuff like that. Like it's a factory, it's already like that, so it's not that big of a deal, but obviously you want to keep the coolant temps down. So pretty simple install. Now it's on to the next. All right guys, now that we got that heat shield installed, we are finally going to get the supercharger installed. I'm super pumped about this part, so let's get started. Boom, right here, supercharger. Let's go. My car is probably going to differ from your car if you have a stock car or a road car for that matter. Not necessarily stock, just a road car. I don't have a lot of stuff on this car. There's no AC condenser, there's no power steering, it's got manual brakes, manual rack, no ABS, no heat, nothing. So the parts that we're going to have to do now to get the supercharger installed is we're going to start with the intercooler. In order to do that, right now we're gonna have to take the radiator out, and then we're gonna have to modify the radiator brackets, and then the radiator support or the core support for clearance for the intercooler piping. But let's start by doing that and getting this intercooler installed. All right, so now on to modifying the core support, radiator, brace, whatever you want to call this. We gotta do some cutting. You're gonna have to cut some sections out for clearance. So start by using this center hole here as a marking point. And we're gonna mark 3 1/8 to one side here. I'm gonna try to get this as close to the center as possible. So we're gonna mark 3 1/8. Cool, so 3 1/8 there. I'm gonna turn it around. And we're gonna do the same thing and 1/8 right there. Point to point here should be about 6 1/4. Basically, once you mark from one point 3 1/8 here, 3 1/8 here, the distance between that two should be 6 1/4. So 3/8, 3/8, 6 1/4. Once that is done here, we're gonna go from, you can kind of see the natural concave where this bump stops. These might be rubber on yours, but the bump stops for the hood will be. We'll go about a 1/2 inch out from this radius here, and then do the same thing on this side, 1/2 inch. Actually a little less on this one because we're gonna need more clearance on this side. We're gonna make some cuts or some drawings. So what you're gonna want here, I'll show you the line here and I'll draw it. Okay, like so. Brush a little tree down here, curl back a little closer to that little radius point here, down that way. As you can see, I left kind of where this curves inward, I left space. That way you can still have that curve for strength. And I did the same thing on that side here. So when it says done, it's gonna look like this. Okay, so we got this cut out and I filed it and whatnot. It's smooth as it's gonna get. I mean, it's not perfect, but it's relatively smooth. You're not gonna mess yourself up. Shave this edge here. Don't mind my mistakes here. I should have had better tools, but there it is. So that's all cut out and cleared. Now here's the issue that I'm running into. Like I said, my car is gonna be different than your car, unless you have a race car like this. This intercooler would have been mounted to the back side of the OEM crash bar, which no longer exists. So I'm gonna have to fab up a bar or bracket or some type of thing to get that to stay. So with that being said, do some YouTube magic and other things are gonna get done, and then this will be one continuous stitch. So with my intercooler, like I was telling you guys before, I had to fab up something so I can mount the intercooler. So here's what I came up with. I used parts that were already meant for the intercooler and just kind of recycle them. I wound up taking these two pieces of steel here, pretty thick. It's technically angle iron because my original plan was to use angle iron, but I wound up cutting it in half. This is not as sharp as it looks. It's actually really dull. Cutting it in half, drilling these two factory mounts out, taking a bolt through there as you can see on both sides. And then these two brackets here were actually the original brackets meant to mount to the crash bar that was here with the plate and stuff. So if you had a factory crash bar, you mount a plate to the back side of it, and these would bolt to that, and then the intercooler would bolt to these. So I reused these, and we'll get it installed. It took a little bit of modification. I kind of bent them a little more at a 90-degree angle, and then drilled these out so the hole, you know, so I can have more leeway. But it's pretty stout. Along with that, I had to drop my my radiator down a couple inches. I haven't fabbed up a bracket yet, but I'm gonna wind up cutting these off here, dropping them down on both sides, cutting that off, dropping it down, and then same thing for these brackets here. They're meant to mount to the side of the radiator, your factory mount, rubber bushings and stuff. I'm going to cut those and relocate those down further. That way the radiator sits level. The reason why I had to do that is because I have AWR drop mounts, so everything is way lower than was intended for this kit. The kit's meant for like OEM height and stuff like that, so like I said, mine's a little different than yours. I'm gonna have a little more oddball things. With that being said, we can get this intercooler mounted up and then we can go on to the next steps. I'm also using the original bolt that came with the kit, and I just added a washer to it to kind of make it work out. So as you can see, it sits level like this. Pretty much where the intercooler was going to sit to begin with. Now we can move on to the next step. Okay, so if you do not have a factory power steering pump, and if you look on the side of your block here and you don't see one of these brackets, make sure to tell them before you order your kit, or get them online. I got this one for like 26 bucks out of Arizona with the bolts. You're going to need this to install your supercharger plate to the block. So let's get this installed. All right, so it goes up here. Okay, so now that we got this bracket installed here, now we can put the plate on. So now we got to get a certain bracket, and these brackets here, I don't know if you can see them, these brackets here, and a bag of bolts, so we can get this bracket stuff situated. So for this install for the bracket, we're gonna need hardware package R3 with no power steering. That's the little helper delete thing, and all the bolts to go to that. All right, so on the side of the block here, there's the eyelet part to pick up the motor on the side. You're gonna take that off, and you're gonna take this bracket using the M10 by 50 bolt, and you're gonna put it here, and you're only gonna hand tighten it, just enough so this thing doesn't flop around. So we're gonna mount the bracket. Here's the power steering. As you can see, there is no power steering bolt, so I'm gonna take the two M10 by whatever these are, the two ones that match. I'm gonna get these kind of started. That way it can be supported by themselves. I lied, the long bolt goes in there. I wound up having to go get a bolt because I did not have a power steering at all. So I went and got this M10 by 125 by 100, I think, to thread through the spot right here where this delete will go. So the delete will go right here. Get this lined up like so. It's gonna be kind of a pain because you got to put a bolt behind it. Okay, so I kind of got that started. Now I'm gonna put this bolt here on the front half. Right here. Have everything kind of loose fitting and starting the way. So I'm gonna leave that kind of loose. Now that that's done, we're gonna put the top bracket on and get that kind of all squared and centered away. Okay, so using these bolts here, you can see that these three right here are different than this one. We'll be installing the T-bracket on top, like so. So the bigger of the Allen heads goes into this hole here. This is why you leave everything kind of loose, because you want to bolt all this down and then nothing fits. The other ones go right here. Get all these kind of snuggish and tightened, and then we'll proceed to do the rest of the tightening here. Okay, now that this is all tightened down, we're going to use the M10 by 70 and nut they provide to install the tensioner, which is going to go right here. So, like so, run that through here. Like that. And get it tightened down. Okay, so now it's time for the adjustment tension or adjustment pulley. You kind of have two. You have a tensioner here, and then you have a manual adjustment one here. This is going to have anti-seize all over it. This is going to have anti-seize. You're going to put anti-seize all over this, and then you're also going to put anti-seize in this face here, and then there's a hole right here, and that keeps all this freely moving, so we don't have any stuck bolts later on down the road. So we're going to get the face of this all nice and anti-seized up. As much as I hate to ruin this pretty surface here, get all this anti-seized up. I'd rather have free spinning parts than not free spinning parts at all. Get this all nice and anti-seized up. Then we're gonna take this nut here and reverse thread it on like so. So it looks like that. You leave plenty of space. On this side, there's a hole. Got that in there like so. We're gonna put this block back here like so. Tighten this up. There we go. So it should be freely spinning like this. Okay, so now that you see that we have all this stuff installed here, the bracket and whatnot, we're gonna wind up taking this off later on, but now we're gonna put the radiator and stuff back in. We're one step closer to putting the supercharger on, so that's pretty awesome. Okay, so once all this is in, what we're gonna do is we're gonna run the Rotrex, the Supercharger oil cooler, which is gonna stay on this side of the car. We're gonna run the lines and stuff like that. And then later on, we're gonna do the oil cooler, which is gonna be on this side of the fender. Let's get these lines over here. All this right here is the kit. Let's get that ran and figure out where to mount all this stuff. Oh, thank goodness I'm wearing gloves. That was sharp. Zip ties, man, they'll get you. So you can kind of see the line going. There's the sway bar. You're gonna run the hose through. Let's see if I can do this from there. In here like that. Like so. I pull this in. You're gonna take the other end of the hose, feed it through there like so. And you're gonna have two hoses running out here because the cooler is gonna run in this area somewhere. So there's that. I'm gonna leave about this much behind here, and then the rest here is gonna hang out. So for my next step, what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna take these fittings and I'm going to insert them here. And easy way to do that is usually with a lighter, but I have a butane torch here, or a MAP torch here. I'm just gonna heat the ends of the hoses up until they get soft enough, and I'm gonna push the fitting onto the hose until the yellow collar is flat using the ground. All right, so both the fittings are done. been pressed on there. They are kind of a pain in the ass, but take your time. Don't burn yourself, wear gloves, and you will get them on there. Okay, so I went ahead and applied some thread sealant to these fittings here, and then using a 15mm wrench, I kind of snugged them down as tight as I could, and then loosened them up a little bit to kind of point in the direction I need them to go. But the thread sealant, I mean, they're not an MPT fitting, but they're a press fit or a cup fit, so they shouldn't leak. But with the thread sealant that I have, plus they also provide you with some, it shouldn't leak after that. Plus, it's not gonna have oil through it for a little bit, so it'll have time to dry. So let's get this mounted and put on. I'm not gonna probably be using this back bolt, but we'll see where this goes. So I kind of got this bracket on here. Obviously it's free floating, so here's the problem. I don't have a factory, I have a factory bumper, but I don't. So this is gonna require some modifications to make sure, one, tire is not gonna hit it, because the tire comes right about here, so it shouldn't. And then two, just being more stable, because this is a little bit floppy. So I think once it's all said and done, I might try to weld off this bracket up here and bolt it to a riv nut up here. That way this stays stable, and maybe cut this off, because I'm not going to be using that. But for the most part, the lines are ran from here through there all the way up to here, and I'll do some cutting and whatnot. So while we figure out what to do with that later on, we're going to move on to the oil reservoir for the supercharger. We'll be using the R5 package here with all the nuts and bolts and flanges and possibly some of the A4s. Let's get that installed. So they provide you with two brackets that that are located inside this bag with the oil filter, and then this kind of off-shaped bracket that's in the package R5, along with two bolts and nuts. And you're basically going to assemble it like this. It's pretty simple. You're going to leave it loose and snug. That way you can adjust it in the engine bay once it's installed, and you get everything tightened up. But this is what it's going to look like. The instructions are pretty clear, but it's going to go in the engine bay, and then we'll run the lines and banjo bolts and stuff to it. Well, we'll do the banjo bolts first and then run the lines and stuff to it. So that extra hose you cut off earlier, that 12-inch one, you're going to install the banjo fitting like this, and that's going to go on the bottom of this after you put your bolt with the two brass fittings between. So we'll install that now. Okay, so it's going to look like that. I'm going to do the same thing. I'm going to leave this a little loose, that way I can move it around in the engine bay like I need it, and then I'll tighten it after that. Okay, so now what we're gonna do is the brake reservoir. It's gonna look different on yours. It might not look different because I have a brake delete, or a brake booster delete, but this 12mm bolt here is where this bracket here, right there, that bolt is gonna go right here. So I gotta take that 12mm bolt off and then get this mounted to here. Okay, so we got the oil reservoir mounted. As you can see, it mounts to the master brake cylinder bolt there. It's pretty simple. I kind of bent it out of the way so I can get access to my slave cylinder reservoir. Right now, I just got to start getting the oil filter and stuff installed. That way I can figure out where I need to put it, because I might have to move this somewhere else. So now we're gonna do some trimming. Here's the oil filter. It's gonna go right about here somewhere, using one of these factory holes to mount the bracket over and put it on there. So what we're gonna do right now is I'm gonna get this tucked away as best as possible. I'm gonna run this hose up and around to here, and I'm gonna cut it and get the banjo fitting hooked up to that. And then this line is gonna hook up to the oil filter, and then the remainder of this line is gonna hook up to that, and then I'll get it all zip tied out of the way. So we're gonna do that next. I'm gonna remove this bracket here because we're gonna have to mock up the supercharger to get these hoses and stuff lined up the way we need. We're gonna get the supercharger mounted on here. So loosen these bolts up here. Now these bolts were, at least for my application, I'm sure for everybody else's, already in the supercharger, so you don't gotta worry about hunting those down. They were already there. They're heavy, so you kind of see you struggling. So that'll give me an idea of where everything needs to go. So now that that's installed, we're going to measure this and get a rough estimate of where I need it to be. It needs to be around so. Like that. Move this out of the way for now. I'm gonna run this behind like that. So, that'll give you room. There you go. Yeah, I'll do it like that. Out of the way, I can mount it out of the way. So I went ahead and installed the banjo fitting here, but we're gonna do the same thing. Brass fitting, banjo bolt, another brass fitting, and then we're gonna install it into the reservoir, which this is the drain or the return line. Now what I ended up doing is wrapping the hose coming from the cooler around here and cutting that. So this is gonna go to here. And then the remainder, the hose here is gonna go from the filter to this side. So let's get this banjo and all that fitted on there. Now we're gonna take the filter, which is marked, and that remainder hose that you cut, the filter here, press it on. It's gonna be a tight fit. Other side here, slide her on up. So then once you get that done, you're gonna take your bracket here and we're gonna mount it down in the wheel well area. Okay, so I kind of got this oil filter mounted the way I want it to. Now all I gotta do is run this line to here, like that. Now once that's installed, we're gonna tighten up the supercharger. We just left it loose to give us access to these two banjo bolts here. I'm gonna try to tighten it down as symmetrical as possible here. Okay, so that, boom, supercharger is installed. Now that we have that done, we're gonna reinstall the bracket because we're getting really close to getting this installed. This right here. There we go. Awesome sauce. Look at that. That is looking marathon. Okay, now for the fun part. We get to install the pulley. After that, you're gonna hand tighten this, which I kind of already did, and make sure you hold the pulley down. And when you tighten it, make sure you only turn it clockwise, just to prevent any damage to the supercharger. And like I said, I already tightened it, and I kind of tightened it in a cross pattern. Okay, now we can get to putting the belt on. I don't know if you noticed this, so with the pulley that I put on, it was actually a 90. Well, and with my ATI dampener setup, I couldn't run their stock pulley system, so I wound up having to go to a 100mm pulley with the ATI damper, which is at 144, that limiting me to 7,250 RPM. But we can put this belt on, and we'll talk more about that later. But let's get this belt put on. It's pretty simple. The install will be the same for yours as it is mine. I just have different pulleys. So you're gonna put it around the bottom of the harmonic balancer. This is gonna be loose right here, so you're gonna move that out of the way. It's gonna go in between here and this pulley, like so. And then you're gonna take your ratchet wrench, or I have one of these serpentine tools, stick it in here. This will relieve tension on your tensioner. Go ahead and slip your belt on. Now that we get all this installed, the belt is on, the pulley's kind of tightened, and everything's adjusted to where it needs to be for now, at least for initial startup. Pulley's on, intercooler's nice and mounted. Now we're gonna install the charge piping from the intercooler to the blower and everything like that. So let's get those installed. So as you can see here, this is kind of a layout. This all depends on your model. This is for 90 to 93. You can skip to step 22 for 94 to 97. Concept is relatively the same. But what we're going to do is we're going to start with these two clamps that go onto the intercooler. And we're going to be using the 36 right here. See where it says 36? For both of these. You'll find all you need in package A7, and you'll get your clamps from there. So let's get these installed. These are going to be a little bit tight, just FYI. I'm going to get these where the screws are on the outside so I can get them over here. But we're going to slide this on like so. Leave these a little bit of wiggle room, kind of squeeze these up. There's a reason why there's a flex here. I don't want these to sit all the way down, because then you kind of defeat the purpose of having this flex joint built in. So don't shove these all the way down, kind of let them sit above the flex joint there. So leave these kind of loose, and then we're going to get the charge piping. Okay, so for the intake side, we're going to be using this pipe here. It's going to be different depending on the model, but for the 94 to 97 models, you're going to have this piece here. These are bent differently. I went ahead and lubed these up so the silicone will slide in a little easier. This is the clamp for the cold side, or the intake side. You will be using the 40s, which they're labeled right there. I don't know if you can get the focus. Right there, 40. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to kind of slide this a little bit past. It's going to be easier if you slide this past, trust me. So there's that. Leave these a little loose. They might come undone, but leave those loose. And we're going to slide this into the intercooler side. So there's that. And this is why you kind of leave it loose so you can get everything fitted. And I'm going to slide this over. Kind of get this adjusted a little bit. So kind of like that. There's clearance here. There's clearance on the inside that I can stick my hand behind the radiator here and get these snug down. All right, so as you can see here, there is clearance through here. Tight clearance here. This is on there a little bit. Obviously that moves out of the way. But clearance from the front of the radiator here. Clearance here on your little cutout. You may or may not have to cut out more. And then you have it in like so. Okay, so now onto the hot side here. You're gonna be using this angle here. As you can see, they have it marked here to where your silicone 90-degree bend that goes into your hot side will slide past to at a certain point. So I'm gonna get this cover off here. And with this one, you're gonna be using the 40/64s or the 1 9/16, 2.5. So I'm gonna slide this like so. Lube this up with soapy water. Don't drop your clamps, but I like to pre-clamp this anyways. So we're going to slide this down in here and then slide this over the hot side. Get everything adjusted to where you need. Same thing goes for this. Kind of got these loose here. That way I can kind of do my clearance. Might have to shave a little more off of this to make sure this pipe clears, but you're clear off of your radiator and like so. So pretty simple. Just got to make sure everything is where it needs to be. It looks like it's really high up, but realistically it's down to this edge right here, so you're pretty good with that. And as you can see, this is a little bit of an angle. Same thing with this. This edge of this pipe is down to here, so it gives enough for this flex pipe to work the way it needs to. All right, so next you're gonna have this little hose here, and this attaches to your throttle body from this side to the bottom of that. As you can see, you're gonna be using the smaller clamps. They're in a different packages. I actually found this one in the A8 package. You will be using the 14 to 27 millimeter. It just goes under here, through here. Okay, let me get that installed right there. And I'm going to get this installed like so. All right, so now we get to install the blow-off valve. So the little cool thing makes a bunch of noises. We have a blow-off valve and then a silicone hose that seems to last forever to install to this port here. And then it's gonna go out and under and out the other side. So let's get that sorted and I'll show you where that goes. But first we gotta get the blow-off valve attached. First, I'm gonna take this piece that they provide you here and we're gonna be using the 16. It's the same hardware package that all the tubing stuff is on. So we're gonna take this, apply it like that, kind of leave them snug like so. Then using this long tube here, we're gonna install the blow-off valve in here. You can see this is the adjustment side here. So it goes on like this. Alrighty, so here's that. So a little closer look here. I have this little short section piece that connects the cold side to the blow-off valve. The adjustment head is pointed that way. So we'll attach this hose here. Kind of goes along the front here, down underneath, all the way around, pokes up right about here. Now this is your return. It's gonna go into your intake tube and there's a little piece that I'll show you next, but that's kind of a general routing. All right, so this is the intake. I already had mounted the filter to the silicone hose. If you're running a standalone ECU, such as Megasport, Haltech, or anything above, you're gonna have this type of intake for your car. If you're still running the MAF sensor, you will have a piping that's almost like half this size, and basically the MAF sensor will go in between that. So a little different, but the same concept. It's going to go in the same spot. Now, what I was telling you about where this intake sits right here, or this tube for the return of the blow-off valve goes, the bottom side of this intake has a hole for it. So basically it's going to sit on there. So let's get that on, and then I'll get everything kind of snugged and tightened up and show. So as you can see, you got the cold side snugged up. You got the IAC return that goes into there, which is nice because before I just had a little makeshift foam filter zip tied to it. But I got that tightened down. This goes down the intercooler. Got these tightened down, all the way back to the hot side. And then here's your blow-off valve routes under here. Like I said, I want to get this, so make sure it doesn't move. But underneath here, it looks tight, but you know, it's not. Goes through there, back up underneath to the intake right here. Swing around this side so you can see better. Right there, here, there's your oil filter for the supercharger. But that comes to here, and there you go. That would be the plumbing setup for the Trackdog Racing. Let's move on to the next step here and get everything going. Looks freaking sick. And as you can see here, you can service this a little easier. I'm still gonna have to get a bigger belt. This thing is way too tight for this setup, but serviceable. You can get to that easily, you can get that easily, you know, plenty of space. Now that I got that set up, I'm going to take the hose they provide you for your blow-off valve, which also comes with a T-fitting. The T-fitting would be used if you want to split off of that to run your boost gauge and stuff like that. But what I'm going to wind up doing is I have two spots here that are capped off that I'm not using. I'm going to take this off. I'm going to run it to the front side of the blow-off valve. So, okay, so now we're going to fill the supercharger up with oil. It's a pretty simple process, but they give you, Trackdog Racing gives you oil. And a little pressurizer, a funnel, and I'll show you how to use that here in a second, but it's pretty simple. You're basically bleeding the system or pressurizing the system to get the fluid to blow through. First, we're going to start by taking a 14mm wrench or socket. So we're going to take a 14mm wrench and we're going to loosen this up. Basically, you're just going to get enough so the pressure can be pushed out and the oil will push out. It's almost like you fill your transmission fluid up and it starts pouring out and you know it's full. It's kind of the same concept, except we're using pressure instead. Now I will take the dipstick off. Okay, so there's supposed to be, at least according to the instructions, like a little rubber grommet that goes around this hole and seals it so you can get pressure, but I think you can shove this in here far enough that you might be able to get pressure out of it like that. I guess we'll see. So let's fill it up 3/4 of the way and see what we can get. Let's see if we can even get this to bleed. As you can see here, started bleeding out a little bit. So I got that nut tightened down afterwards. I'm gonna top that off, then I'm gonna change the oil, put some coolant in it, and we'll start this thing up. Oh, we're so close. Okay, so I think I'm ready. I guess. I think I'm ready. I don't know what else could be missing. Okay, got the jump box on it. I haven't had a tune in here. It's still running off of stock injector programming, even though it's got the F-graded ones in here. But I just want to see. I am so nervous. Woo! I just want to see if it starts. So here goes nothing. Oh my god! There it is, guys. It's alive. I mean, there's gonna be some stuff we gotta go over, Right now, nothing's leaking. I'm gonna leave it running for a little bit. Let the coolant run through it, which I shouldn't have done anyways, because I'm gonna have to modify that radiator, but I really just want to get this thing started up. Other than that, it's running. Holy crap, you know? Anyways, guys, there you have it. Trackdog Racing and a Miata Supercharger install. I'd like to seriously thank Trackdog Racing for helping me out through every step of this way. They've been seriously phenomenal. I will leave a link in the description below to where you can buy them. Hit them up, tell them I sent you. I'm not getting anything off of this, I'm just telling you. Trackdog Racing is one of the top 3 people I've dealt with, from AWR to Spike Performance and now them. They're a phenomenal, phenomenal crew out there. Hit them up, call them. They love talking about Miatas. I'm gonna leave a link below to where you can buy this stuff. Hit them up. I'm also gonna leave a link below for any Spike Performance hood louvers, apparel, coffee mugs. Just hit them up, click the link. It's been amazing to me. I promise you won't regret it. And also, hit up AWR. Leave a link. I'll leave a link in the description below for any of your AWR products, motor mounts, stuff like that. Sway bar, brackets, just all sorts of stuff, tow hooks, and use code Zitro at checkout to get 10% off. Like I said, I can't even finish the video. I'm so emotional right now. I didn't think this was ever gonna get done, at least to this part. But anyways, guys, thank you. Stay tuned. If you like what you saw, please hit that bell notification. I promise there's so much more I'm gonna be doing to this. We just gotta go get this thing tuned. We gotta drive it around a little bit, make sure everything's good. I have other things I planned for this. I still got brakes to put on this. I got other big things I need to do to this car. But for now, I believe she's almost ready and we can get on to moving with new things. Thank you guys, everybody, all my new subscribers, just everyone. You mean so much to me. I'm just so happy right now. Yeah, I'm gonna sit here and watch this run for hours because, yeah, leave a thumbs up, leave a comment, subscribe, hit that bell notification for more stuff, and I'll see you guys at the track. Deuces, thank you for coming with me on this journey. Peace out.